Levels of biological organization. The first level of organization that we're going to look at is the atom. The atom is the smallest level of organization for life. It is the smallest unit of an element of matter. Gold, aluminum, etc. are all going to be made up of atoms. Those then make up elements. A molecule is going to be the next level of organization. By definition, a molecule is more than one atom in a stable association. Water is an example of a molecule. In water, we have 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen, thus the symbol H2O. If we take a bunch of molecules and put them together, ultimately we're going to get a cell. A cell is going to be the smallest unit of life. As long as you have one cell, you can be considered to be alive. Additionally, inside of our cell we have smaller molecules forming structures called organelles. Organelles are simply little organs, if you will, or the structures inside of the cell that undergo metabolism and allow the cell to maintain its structure and function. Tissue is the next level of organization. In order to be a tissue, we have to take many cells and put them together in a stable situation. So by definition, a tissue is an association of cells with the same function. Now, if we take a bunch of tissues, we can make up an organ. An organ is going to be 2 or more tissues working together. So take any organ that you're familiar with, the stomach, for example. The stomach is going to have muscle tissue, which allows it to move. It's going to have nervous tissue, which tells it to move, or tells the muscle to move. It will also have an epithelial tissue. We'll get to that later. However, an epithelial tissue is going to be lining the stomach as well. So there's, in this case, at least 3 tissues making up that organ. And you can do the same thing with, the heart, if that's the organ that you choose to work with. So examples of organs would be the heart, the lungs, the muscles, and really any other organ that you choose. Now, if we take the organs and we put them together and have them working for the same function, we would have an organ system. By definition, this is 2 or more organs working together. If you would like to take the digestive system, for example, you've got organs such as the large intestines, the small intestines, the stomach, the liver, the esophagus, etc. All of those organs are going to be working together in order to get the food digested. So, an example, we have nervous system as an organ system. That would contain things like the brain, the spinal cord, nerves, digestive system, which we just mentioned, and there are others as well. There's cardiovascular system, there's integumentary system, there's respiratory systems, to mention a few. Now, if we take all of those organ systems and we put them together, we're going to end up with an organism. An organism is when all of those organ systems work together, and you and I, for example, are considered to be organisms. So a human is the example. However, you can choose another organism if you would like. If you have a dog or cat, they would also fall underneath this level of organization. This is the level, the highest level that we'll deal with in this class. The next couple levels that we'll look at get to a broader spectrum. So if we take a bunch of organisms and put them together in an area, we would end up with a population. And the way I like to explain this is when you're driving down the road and you come across that green sign that says, for example, Rockford, and it has a population. What we're talking about is the population of humans. It doesn't take into account how many, rabbits and birds and deer are in the area. So a population, by definition, is going to be a group of individuals of the same species living together. Now, if we take the next level of organization to be the community, what we're going to have is a population of different species living and interacting together. So technically, a community is going to be the humans and the birds and the deer and bunnies and such that are living together in one area. Going just a little bit larger scale now, we're going to have the ecosystem. Our ecosystem is going to be all the organisms and the non-living elements of an area. So you can probably imagine what the organisms are. The non-living elements of an area are going to be things like the air, the water, the rock, etc. in that particular area. And the broadest level of organization that we'll deal with is something called the biosphere. As it shows in the picture on the bottom right, you can see that the biosphere is in fact, in this case, our Earth. So it's all ecosystems living together. It would be the deserts and the rainforests and such, all working together in one particular area. What we're going to do now is look at the organization of life. So we know the different levels of organization, but we also can organize this as far as taxonomy goes. So to begin, the broadest organization that we're going to have is something called a domain. There are a couple different domains. One of them is the domain bacteria. In the domain bacteria, you're going to, of course, have bacteria. These cells or organisms are prokaryotic, which means that they have no membrane-bound nucleus. The name prokaryotic means before nucleus, so they do in fact have genetic information. It's just not contained inside of a membrane-bound nucleus. The next domain is something called archaea. Organisms that are put into the domain archaea are prokaryotic. So again, this is before nucleus, or meaning that they have no membrane-bound nucleus. And these are organisms that live in extreme environments. So they might be living in something like a hydrothermal vent in the ocean. They might also be living in areas that are subject to very, very high pressures. Eukarya is the domain that we fall into. This organisms in the domain eukarya have eukaryotic cells. That means that we have a true nucleus, and we do have our DNA inside of a membrane-bound nucleus. Eukarya also contains 4 kingdoms. The kingdoms are the mechanism of organization that used to be the broadest. Now we've added in an even broader area, which is the domains. So the 4 kingdoms would be the fungi, the plants, the animals, and the protists. This picture just shows you how we organize life. You can see that there are the bacteria and the archaea domains off to the left bottom of the picture, and then eukarya domain is larger. That's the one that bubbles up superiorly, and you can see that it does in fact have the 4 kingdoms inside of that particular domain.